Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for honoring our invitation to join this online webinar from your different locations across the world in commemoration of the 2020 World Day Against Human Trafficking under the UN team committed to the cause working on the front line to end human trafficking. My name is Lawrenta Igoh. I'm an anti-human trafficking advocate from Nigeria and criminology and criminal justice student of Solent University, Southampton, a Chevening Scholar, convening this event alongside other Chevening Scholars and guest facilitators from the UK and the US. This event is going to take us through 3 rounds, and we hope that you enjoy every bit of it. Just to let you know, our esteemed participants, that sessions from this event will be recorded, and proceedings from the recording will be shared with participants at the end of the session. I hope you enjoyed the first round of this online webinar, and I would like to introduce to you our moderator from the day, esteemed lady from Pakistan, Waiza Rafiq. Thank you once again for joining.
Thank you and welcome to this very important session on anti-human trafficking, which is a very important international concern. And I think that after today's discussion, we'll get to have more insight and more perspectives from all our distinguished speakers on this issue. And we really hope that when we leave this session, our knowledge before and after the session is significantly different and is far more better. Thank you once again. My name is Waiza Rafiq. I'm a practicing lawyer from Pakistan and I'm a Chevening Scholar. I am about to start my master's in criminal law from the University of Sussex. I am very happy to have our amazing speakers with us, including Mr. Andrew Kingswell, Mr. Chris Gay, Ms. Vanessa Fleming, Marilee Frank, and then in round 2, we'll have Chevening Scholars, including Joshua, Miss Lawrenta, Mr. Samuel, Miss Basma, and Mr. Lelo. Before we formally begin the session, I would request Miss Basma to give a welcome note and a brief introduction about today's webinar. Basma, are you with us? I think she is yet to join. Hey Basma, are you with us?
Yeah. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing fine. So now it's the time of remarks.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
hello. Yeah, thank you so much, Rafi. Hello, everybody. Today we are speaking or memorizing the working on the front lines to end human trafficking, and it's the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. Because each one of us have a role to learn, to seek knowledge, to take action, and to change narratives, and to help people and victims of trafficking. So that's why our webinar is a learning opportunity and a reflection opportunity for all of us to seek more knowledge and to learn more and to share our practices, best practices, and also to share our knowledge among each other in order to take action to end the human trafficking at each other or each one own capacity, whether in the academic settings, professional settings, national settings, or international settings. By seeking knowledge and taking action and educating ourselves and others as well, we are making we hopefully towards making a better world for each other. So we encourage you all to participate, to engage in questions today for the speakers and for also the Chevening speakers to discuss about human trafficking and to share your knowledge and discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Basma. That was amazing. Um, Moving forward, I would now request Mr. Anjin Kingswell, who is an esteemed guest speaker among us, to say a few words about anti-human trafficking. Mr. Anjin Kingswell completed 30 years police service with the Hampshire Constabulary in July 2015. As a career detective of 18 years, he gained a wealth of experience, particularly within the fields of covert policing, intelligence, public protection, and anti-corruption. Anjin qualified as a senior investigating officer in 2005. In September 2015, Anjin joined the team at Sustainable Criminal Justice Solutions in a role that combines both project and program management skills, training design, and delivery. To date, Anjin has designed and delivered training programs in Turkey, Pakistan, Georgia, Jamaica, and Nigeria to a range of LEAs and specialist agencies. Thank you very much, Mr. Anjin Kingswell, for being with us. Over to you.
Wazar, thank you very much. Can I just check you can hear me okay?
Yes, you're very much audible.
That's good. Well, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to contribute to this amazing webinar, and also to be amongst Chevening Scholars. That's not a bad place to be for me. So I'm conscious of time. So in my 10 minutes, I just want to share some experience, I think, and observations from the work that we've done at SCJS. So by way of a brief introduction, Sustainable Criminal Justice Solutions is a global not-for-profit capacity building organisation. Our specialism is in the rule of law. And I say that because our status as not-for-profit means that we are able to access funding streams from the UK government and from the European Union that sit behind projects and initiatives across the world. So if we are granted the project, then we deliver it on behalf of the European Union or the government. Now, of course, those projects are aligned to national or government priorities and the EU priorities, of which, of course, security is one of those. And what we find also is that they are both aligned to sort of global initiatives, sustainable development goals from the UN, for example. And the reason I say that is because that gives us a strategic context. What we end up doing is delivering to what's often described as sort of upstream capability building. So we are delivering to practitioners in law enforcement. So the experiences I just want to share with you are within that context. This is about what we've learned when it comes to delivering projects that are related to human trafficking. I'm going to focus on just 3 geographical areas to highlight some of the points which I hope answer in part the rather massive question that's been set about the who, the how, the good practice and the UK perspective, which is a huge question, but I hopefully can give some flavour or an answer in part. So the 3 areas that I'm going to focus on, which is where we've been operating over the last 6 years, is Nigeria, Turkey and Pakistan. I'm going to start in Nigeria. We worked in Nigeria with probably 2 key agencies. The first was the Apex organization for dealing with trafficked people. So that was NAPTIP. And the second organization we spent a lot of time with was the Nigerian Navy. So if I start with the Nigerian Navy, they have a duty to protect Nigerian waters, but because they have the largest navy in the west coast of Africa, then they have this agreement where they protect other countries along that coast. And we were spending time with the Nigerian Navy to help them to look for concealment within vessels. So this is shipping that's traveling up the west coast of Africa that is transporting illicit commodities. And when I say illicit commodities, this is primarily people that are being trafficked, and firearms and drugs. So what that tells us, and what it relates to in the current climate, is the transit route of West Africa. So what we find is that especially French-speaking Africans use the West Coast as a transit route, which, because of COVID, more so because of COVID, we see that transit route being exploited with people moving into Canary Islands. So French speakers arriving in a Spanish territory then starts to provide the access route into Southern Europe, Spain, France, Belgium, for example. So it really highlighted two things for us. One, the West African transit route, and secondly, concealment, which is massive in today's climate. You've only got to look at the tragedy last year, October, of the migrants in the refrigerated lorry unit in Essex. Similar tragedies in Austria. Human beings are being trafficked now in concealed containers, and in concealed units, often with tragic consequences. So that was point one when it came to the Navy and working in Nigeria. Working with NAPTIP presented us with some commentary that is worth sharing with you again, just to inform this debate. We analysed some a dozen or so prosecution files that have been prepared by NAPTIP, and it was part of us being able to provide context to the training that we were delivering around investigation. Now, what we found within those files, and I'm sure this is knowledge amongst those that work in this environment, is the exploitation of the poorest and the most vulnerable of people. And when we say exploitation, it's not as obvious as perhaps we think in a privileged position. What we were finding there, just looking at those files, is one, a victim had a choice of hope or hopelessness, I think is how we summed it up. There were no options for them. That was at an individual level where they chose to be trafficked because it was a means by which they could support a family, by a means by which they could support a community. And it was often seen as the norm. And of course, coming from the UK, this was a bit of a surprise to us, although we'd read about it, but to actually hear about it, see the files, read the testimony, it's quite startling. And then particularly so if you then see the same people being trafficked again because that's the choice they made for the second time around, because they'd been rejected by a family, rejected by a community, because they hadn't been able to provide something of an income. And I think that's worthy of note, because my lens is solely looking at this from allowing law enforcement to be more competent and more capable in dealing with it from a law enforcement perspective. And that is very much a very tiny part in this global tragedy. So it was a highlight for us there, a headline and something we walked away with sort of startling consciousness around it. So that was Nigeria. Headlines from Turkey was very much around the exploitation of the migrant routes by those that are trafficking human beings. So what we saw there, working with the Turkish Navy, the TMP, the Turkish police, and the gendarme, was that where there is mass migration of individuals, traffickers will exploit the volume, the anonymity, and it provides an opportunity to move people. Now, Turkey is so strategically placed, significantly strategically placed as the link between Africa, Europe, East and West, that it's doing in parts a fantastic job. If you look at the work they're doing in Gaziantep, but they have porous borders as well. And so there's a flood into Turkey, and then that then presents the Western Balkans with a challenge. And I say that because as far as the UK is concerned, that's the primary secondary transit route into Northern Europe, so Austria, Germany, and into the UK. And of course, what we're finding again is concealment is the choice at the or has been historically, but of course, with COVID-19 and the allied restrictions and limitations, then concealment in freight, in trains, and so on and so forth becomes the choice. What you also find from working with those two agents, or three agencies rather, is the use of technology in controlling those that are being trafficked. And I'll come on to in my final piece just around the control element and the organisation behind this, a little bit of the who. So that was Turkey. My final area that I just want to talk about and hopefully just bring my little 10 minutes to a close is Pakistan. We're currently working in Pakistan with a series of authorities there looking at organised immigration crime. We've been there for about 18 months at the moment, and what's the narrative or the observations I just want to share in respect of that is that two elements to organised immigration crime that are useful for us as law enforcement. One is following the money. When it comes to being able to intervene and have some impact on human trafficking, following the money through illicit financial flows is a key tool in the arsenal that law enforcement can use. And I say that because it is organised. And when we talk about organised crime, what we're really talking about is very astute, highly effective businessmen. And that's our approach when we look at agencies and work with agencies who are tasked with looking at organised crime, is these people are highly organised, they have resources at hand, they are logistically astute, they have transportation hubs, they have effective transportation, effective communication. They are running a very, very highly effective, highly lucrative business. And so from a law enforcement perspective, is there any way that we can find a weakness or vulnerability so we can disrupt that chain in any part, then that's how you'll find law enforcement approaching this in general terms. It's a business, it's got a process. If we can break any part of that process, then we'll have some impact on organised crime. And I think I'll leave it there. I said I'm conscious of time, and I'm grateful for the opportunity just to share some of our experiences, historic and current, when it comes to human trafficking. So Weza, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for such an insightful talk. We're very happy to have you. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I would move forward to our next speaker, Mr. Chris Gay. Mr. Chris Gay is a human rights advocate and modern-day abolitionist with 20 years of experience working in sub-Saharan Africa. He is co-founder and president of Freedom Now International, a non-profit working to end modern slavery and liberate victims of human trafficking. Chris is the current SE4U UNTOC expert in cross-cutting issues related to trafficking in persons at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. From 2014 to 2019, he was managing director for Ending Modern Slavery at Engage Now Africa, where Chris developed End Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking programs, specializing in prevention, rescue, rehabilitation, prosecution, and partnership building. This resulted in hundreds of trafficking victims and survivors being rescued, rehabilitated, human traffickers prosecuted, and a dozen successful convictions. We are very happy to have Mr. Chris Gay among us. Over to you, Mr. Chris. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I am really honored to be here and hope everyone can hear me.
Yes,
And
we can hear you.
thank you so much for the introduction. That saved me time. So I'm mindful of time as well, and I'm really honored to be here with all of you. And as I sit here, my phone is like blowing up, you know, and I just left the UNODC meeting here in New York, and I'm seeing threats against my partner in Uganda. I'm seeing images and information from victims of trafficking in need of desperate help coming to my phone. And this is just a very stark reminder on why this day today and this summit and us gathering together is so critical. And I'm just flooded with so much when I think about this issue and with this time frame I have. So I'm going to get right to it, because when I think of USA, UK, you know, international work and in Africa, I think of collaboration and how key this is, because criminals collaborate very effectively. They're very dynamic. They're very fluid. They're very, you know, opportunistic. They're very engaged. My experience in this past decade of just in sub-Saharan, specifically on trafficking and transnational organized crime, has seen me and seen these individuals, these groups, organized crime groups or criminals, you know, whoever they are, they're come in all shapes and sizes and forms, be very fluid. And we need to get just as fluid and more dynamic in our collaboration. So I'm so grateful to see all these people here today. Some of them people I recognize and have partnerships with, and other people I am beginning relationships with, but it's so grateful to see representatives from law enforcement, terrorism, security, you know, legal, because this is such a cross-cutting interdisciplinary issue. And in collaboration, that is what's made our work in Africa in particular very successful. Having NGO partnerships with law enforcement. We have memorandums of understanding with various African police units, as well as some with military, like intelligence or other units, and as well as Interpol. And don't underestimate Interpol. They have been able to play a role that has been able to handle corruption in Africa within a law enforcement that's been very effective. And that's another whole nother topic, is corruption, right? So collaborative partnerships with law enforcement, with international government organizations like the UN, UNODC, government ministries, and, you know, specifically Ministry of Internal Affairs, Foreign Affairs, these are very key, and embassies abroad in various countries where victims are really struggling, particularly now with the COVID-19. And the legal is huge. I just was happy to hear today for the first time from the US Ambassador of Trafficking in Persons, John Richmond, that prosecution rates have gone up, where I've seen them very low, and they still are low, let's be honest. But it's just good news to see that there's some increase and in that area. And so we all need to work in these groups, and obviously training and talking like this is critical, and resources, right? We're all struggling for resources. Every one of us, I know we have our resource challenges in all these areas. And so that leads me to my next, you know, kind of segue is COVID-19. It's so just on everyone's forefront because we're all living it. And obviously this has created a huge resource block for, you know, NGOs and even governments. Even the UN at the UNODC had a 30% slash in the budget, you know, and so we're all trying to figure this out. And obviously criminals are exploiting this. And, you know, criminals never obeyed the law to begin with. That's why they're criminals. So of course they're gonna exploit this. But how can we also exploit it to our benefit as, you know, individuals, as organizations, working in collaborative networks? I think it's really important. We really identify through each of us in our organizations, what are we really good at? At Freedom Now International, we're really good at rescue, but rescue led us to realize I'm gonna be involved in helping rescue victims until I die. You know, there's just such an overwhelming need of people in trafficking. So it's sustainable, it needs so much more work there. So that's where when our model shifted, you know, to prevention, to rehabilitation, to partnership, to prosecution, having a much more holistic approach. where we have these partners identified. And I think that's really important to understand when we're all working on this issue, is that in collaboration again. COVID-19, this is also coming from the UNODC. It's saying 500 million people are going to be forced into poverty as a result of this. And we all know that's a root issue that's feeding this issue to begin with, right? So that's not good to hear. But, and there's also increased trauma, because look, we're all talking. I'm normally used to having people with me when we're doing this. You know, you got a face-to-face conference and all that, but all of us are in our little places in the world right now, and we can't let this, you know, disrupt us either, or feel isolated or like you're alone, because we're not alone. And I think that's important to recognize, and because there's trauma from this that's happening to people. Quickly, technology. When I think about this issue, it's such a tool that could be being used even in sub-Saharan Africa. And as Africa gets more and more wired and connected, get ready, you know, we need to be ahead of that. And what I like to think of is what's often being overlooked is how the financial sector, banks in particular, can really help in this area. And I'm finding them to be much more collaborative with law enforcement and NGOs versus the big five, you know, the big tech companies. Yes, they have interest, but there's also conflicts of interest because they have revenue streams. Banks can be trained, and there's really good people with skills within this movement, from law enforcement, from anti-money laundering, from fraud, that can train bank employees to leverage on a ledger level signs of trafficking, and also use databases to scan, you know, the customers at the bank that can raise flags. I can't tell you how many investigations I've been involved in. They've hit snags when it comes to illicit flows through banks, but that doesn't need to happen anymore. There's really the ability these days with technology to improve that. And what I like about that is when it comes to prosecution, it's a great tool for evidence collection that also takes the burden off the victim being the center of the prosecution. It's already hard enough to prosecute trafficking, let alone to re-traumatize a victim in a prosecution case, or have that victim face their abuser, their trafficker. And if we can get better evidence collection, especially using, you know, bank records or other records, and better evidence collection, it can take that away from the victim being the center of that, and be really strong as well. So I see the financial sector as a great place for us to all be looking at in ways of also collaborating. I mean, we're using simple technology even on WhatsApp to help victims send us and teach them how to send us their GPS locations in the Middle East. We have hundreds of Africans we're trying to help that are stuck right now in the Middle East. They don't even know where they are. And the ones that are lucky enough to make communication with us, we are able to find out where they are. And then it's a matter of working with the embassies there, government officials, Interpol, and all these other institutions to see what we can do. Let's see, I know my time is getting close here. It's not impossible either. It's such a massive issue, but it's not impossible. You know, I look at where we began as an organization, and from 2016 to 2020 presently, we've been involved in over 441 rescues of victims. And I'm talking predominantly forced labor victims, transnational, from Africa to the Middle East, was the majority of those. And the other ones were internal, that deal with indigenous or cultural trafficking issues in Africa, whether it's Chukoski in Ghana or child sacrifice in Uganda, that are very challenging forms of child trafficking involving harmful practices related to witchcraft or other traditions that are really been infiltrated and exploited by criminals because of conflicts and other issues. And so I just want to share a great resource through the UNODC. If you guys have not heard of it, you may have. It's called Sherlock. It's free on the UNODC website. Please use it to your advantage. It is like a Bible of information. And it has legal case studies. Lawyers, you can update real case information into it as well to contribute to it. You can also, other people can contribute to it, but it's a very good free database. And the UNODC just came out with a toolkit since this is the 20th anniversary of Trafficking in Persons Protocols. help all of us engage in this and get the laws being delivered on the ground and working. So I know that's a lot. I hope it was helpful, and I see all of you as, you know, new colleagues and partners, and please feel free to, you know, connect with me on LinkedIn or through email or however you want. We got to work together. You know, this is too big of an issue for any one person or organization to do. So I am honored to be here, and I thank you for this opportunity and want to learn as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chris Gay. It was such a wonderful session, and thank you for mentioning all those important resources that we can still go back and refer to. And yes, your social media profiles are all open, and everyone out there in our participants, other panelists or speakers, whosoever wants to connect, that's a great opportunity. Thank you. With this, I would move on to our next speaker, Miss Vanessa Fleming. Miss Vanessa Fleming is a UK National Crime Agency International Liaison Officer based in Lagos, Nigeria. Since 2015, Vanessa has been the project lead for the Joint Border Task Force, a partnership between UK and Nigeria law enforcement agencies to strengthen capacity to combat serious organized crimes, including human trafficking. Thank you very much, Ms. Vanessa, for being with us today. Before I request Ms. Vanessa to start, I would suggest all the participants who want to pose any questions to our panelists so far, they can post their questions in the comment section so that we're able to take those questions towards the end of this round. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Vanessa.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon about some of the good work that we're doing in Nigeria on human trafficking. So, as you know, the UK has a massive commitment to eradicating modern slavery globally by 2030. And in Nigeria, we have a very strong partnership with the Nigerian government to tackle modern slavery and human trafficking here. This is a cross-government approach with various departments involved tackling different aspects of the problem. So we have a Department for International Development addressing the drivers of modern slavery and human trafficking and looking at developing alternative livelihoods for people who are at risk of being trafficked. We have the Modern Slavery Fund supporting the rehabilitation of returning victims of trafficking. And working on the prevention and strategic communication side of things. But the area that I work in is obviously capacity building in the criminal justice sector, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So the Joint Border Task Force project started in 2015, so we're 5 years in now. And the aim of the project is to support Nigeria in building its capacity to tackle serious organized crime, which impacts on border issues such as human trafficking. We work with 28 officers from NAPTIP, the federal agency with the mandate to tackle human trafficking in Nigeria, at 3 locations. We started in Lagos and we subsequently expanded and have teams based in Benin City and Kano in the north of Nigeria on the overland route of Nigeria up through Niger into Libya. We work with investigators and we also work with prosecutors to develop their capabilities. So I just wanted to share with you very briefly five lessons that I've learned over 5 years of working on the JBTF project. The first, and I think probably the most important, is the necessity to take a victim-centered approach. We always need to put the needs of the witness at the heart of all of our operational work, whether that's through upskilling officers in specialist witness interviewing, building physical infrastructure, so building dedicated vulnerable witness suites which allow victims to give their evidence in privacy and in dignity, as we've recently opened one with NAPTIP in Benin City. This results not only in better evidence to support a prosecution, but is a better experience for the witness and their first engagement with law enforcement. Video interviewing of witnesses has been a really key part of that strategy, and has improved outcomes in prosecutions. And really, with every investigation, having a witness care strategy and prioritising that. So that can be very simple things, just by maintaining regular contact with the victim throughout the life of the investigation and the life of the prosecution, which allows you to pick up issues like witness intimidation, which is very common in Nigeria, and those issues can be dealt with quickly and robustly. The second thing, and it was nice to hear Chris talking about collaboration. This is a global problem which demands a global solution. So I like to think of it as a whole route approach. Our highest goal really needs to be joined up investigations in source, transit and destination countries to maximize the disruption to human trafficking networks. And the key to that is really fostering strong relationships between law enforcement partners, which are based on mutual respect and trust. And on JBTF, our way of doing that has been to host visits from European partners and to put them in a room with our Nigerian law enforcement officers so that they can have confidence that those officers are experienced, they're professional, they're trustworthy, they're keen, and they're anxious to do a good job. This has resulted in a number of really successful joint investigations with a number of European partners, with the UK, and also with partners across West Africa, including Mali, Ghana, and Republic of Benin. So one particular example of that was the prosecution of a trafficker called Chevening Scholars in the UK. She was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment after a joint UK, Germany and Nigeria investigation for offences committed outside the UK. So the victims were actually trafficked from Nigeria to Germany. They never entered the UK, but the new Modern Slavery Act in the UK allows the prosecution of a UK national for human trafficking offences committed outside the UK. So that was a really good success. And I think that one of the main learning points from that is that traffickers are shocked by the strength and depth of cooperation between countries. I think when Mrs. Igoh saw officers from NAPTIP give evidence in court in the UK, that was a tremendous surprise to her. So that's an advantage that we all really need to exploit through collaboration. The third point really is to look at the whole process from end to end. So from intelligence collection and development through to the investigation, prosecution, and asset recovery after a successful conviction. You need to look at it all. There's no point focusing on one particular area of that. So you can train investigators in advanced digital forensic techniques, but if you don't have a prosecutor who understands how to present that evidence effectively in court, and then you don't have judges that understand the evidence that's being presented to them and the impact of it, then one of those elements falls down. So it's really important to address all of those aspects, which is something that we've done on the JBTF project. And I think it's really important also to challenge assumptions. So, and just to get people talking to each other. So on JBTF, we found that prosecutors were reluctant to use the very good Nigerian legislation, which allows you to use special measures in court to protect victims. They didn't think the judges were going to agree to it. We spoke to the judges, and the judges were like, well, I don't know why anybody ever applies for it. It's really strange. So by putting the judges and the prosecutors together in a room, they could talk about it and understand that those applications would be assessed on their merits, and it was worthwhile to try. The fourth thing I've learned really is that change doesn't happen overnight. The model of JBTF really is about long-term mentoring. delivering training overseas and expecting that to instantly yield results is problematic. To really embed new practices into everyday operational activity, you really need to take the time for the officer themselves to make the decision that it's worthwhile. I can say something is a really good tactic, but until you yourself as an investigator believe that it's a good tactic, you know, if I go, it won't be sustainable. So that's really important. So mentoring is key, and mentoring is a partnership, it's a dialogue. It's not about imposing UK best practice in Nigeria. It's about finding a way of tailoring best practice to the local context and finding tactics that really work. I think the fifth thing is aspirational, really. It's not something we're currently implementing, but it's something that I'm increasingly recognizing is important to integrate into these capacity building projects. And that is that this work is really hard. It's really hard on those of us who work in the front line. So you have officers on a daily basis who are listening to people talking about the worst that human beings can do to other human beings, and that inevitably takes a toll. So I think going forward, it's really important to parallel developments in investigative capability with other programs which support the frontline officers, you know, whether that's well-being programs, whether that's access to counselling and psychological support. I think that's a really, really important element. So that's a brief overview, five key lessons from 5 years of experience on JBTF, which I hope was of interest, and I hope it was helpful.
Thank you very much for this insightful and very intriguing discussion. I would now want to move forward to our next speaker, Miss Marilee. Miss Marilee is an American professional and co-founder of the South Shore Interfaith Coalition Against Human Trafficking, Massachusetts, United States of America. Marilee, she's an American doctoral student of educational leadership, skilled in writing and research, trained in program development and evaluation, and grant writing. Former teacher and retired school administrator, including principal, talent coordinator, curriculum coordinator, director of curriculum, assistant superintendent, and head of a charter school. Thank you very much, Ms. Marilee, for being with us today. Hope to have a great session. Thank you. Over to you. Marilee, are you with us?
No. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction, and greetings from Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Marilee, as you announced, and my husband and I, Frank, who's sitting next to me, are co-founders of a coalition, faith-based coalition here in Massachusetts. So I would like to especially thank Lawrenta, who's one of the presenters that you'll be hearing, who invited us to share information about our work with the coalition. And we had the pleasure of meeting Lawrenta and learning about her anti-human trafficking work in Nigeria when she was in the United States and a Mandela Washington Fellow at Bridgewater State University in 2018. And as one of the previous presenters said, it is so very important for those of us that work in this field to collaborate with others and learn about human trafficking and what is happening, not only locally for each of us, but globally. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we started our coalition in Massachusetts, why we started it, and some of the activities that we are involved in working on here in Massachusetts. We learned about human trafficking from a friend, Deb Fowler, who is the founder of Eyes Wide Open in New York. Deb had lived in Kuwait for several years and worked with human trafficking victims, more the labor trafficking, and they were called the runaway maids. And Frank and I admit that we didn't really realize that human trafficking was happening here in the United States, as many other people do not realize. And we didn't realize that it was happening in our local communities. So our eyes have been opened to that. Today, we know that the UN estimates, sadly, that there are about 43 million people enslaved in human trafficking, which is a modern day form of slavery. The United States, just for a little historical perspective, passed the first trafficking laws in 2000, and it's called the United States Trafficking Victims Protection Act. It was passed in 2000, and it's focused on a three-prong approach against human trafficking: prevention, second, protection, and third, prosecution. And we're pleased to say that even in Massachusetts, in the last couple of years, we're seeing many, many more prosecutions of the traffickers and less arrests of the victims of human trafficking, which is been one of our concerns here in Massachusetts. During the last 6 years, when we began to learn about this, we've learned that the statistics have been increasing. When we started working on human trafficking in 2014 in the United States, human trafficking was the third largest crime behind drugs and guns. And sadly, now it's number 2. It is number 2 behind opioids and drug addiction, which the two are really so closely connected together because the traffickers use drugs to control their victims, and many times the victims take drugs to just survive what they're enduring. We started a human trafficking awareness campaign in our church, United Church of Christ Congregational in Norwell, Massachusetts, in 2016. A couple of years after we learned about this. We won a national grant for $10,000, which allowed us to expand our coalition to an interfaith coalition. We now have 11 different faith communities involved in our coalition, and through collaboration with different faith-based communities, we are able to do much more than only working as a single unit. So our mission of the coalition is to raise awareness, provide education about human trafficking locally, nationally, and globally. And some of the activities that we participate in are giving presentations at conferences, churches, and organizations. We have held several regional forums with survivors, keynote speakers, and panelists to learn more about human trafficking and to help members of our communities learn more about human trafficking. We provide support for survivors through donations, and one of our favorite programs has been the Bags of Hope workshop. In 2016, we became friends with a survivor named Jasmine Grace, who is from Massachusetts, and she's spoken at several of our events. And she was the founder of Bags of Hope, which is a training program for youth. So once or twice a year, we hold Bags of Hope workshops where a survivor talks with our youth and they are from regionally from different communities in Massachusetts, for about an hour, sharing their story and helping them understand what human trafficking is. This is so absolutely important because if our youth, which in the United States, the average age for being trafficked now, sadly, is 12 to 14 years. That's the main focus. And so what we want to do is have our young people learn about human trafficking and the signs and how the traffickers entice them into human trafficking so that they're prevented from being involved. And one of the things that we've learned from working with survivors is that many times they said they wished that someone realized the bruises, the days they were absent from school. Why didn't their teachers, why didn't their administrators notice? Why didn't their friends notice? So by training our youth and our youth leaders, we're hoping that this will make a difference. So in closing, I know we have a short amount of time for all of us to share. We have been collaborating with many other anti-human trafficking organizations in Massachusetts. We're sharing our best practices, and that's how we're learning to do more work and reach more people. But there are 4 things that individuals can do to help prevent human trafficking. 1, get trained. There are online courses. Learn about the signs of human trafficking. Join a human trafficking group, awareness group, and you'll learn more about what to do if you do see human trafficking in your community. Number 2, raise your voice. Share information on social media. There's a group in the United States, Truckers Against Trafficking, that have excellent information. They have a Facebook, and I share a lot of their information to my friends, our friends. Number 3, contact your legislators. There are new laws needed to train schools, medical professionals, hospitality groups, transportation, and law enforcement. We know that some young people have been saved from human trafficking because flight attendants were trained here in Massachusetts. So that's really important. Frank and I have testified at the state on behalf of human trafficking survivors. And number 4 is support national and state groups with donations. Thank you for this opportunity to learn from the rest of you and for us to share our coalition's work. Let's work together to end human trafficking.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marilee. Thank you. Sorry for that. With this, we have reached towards the end of our first round, and let's see if we have any questions. You can post your questions in the comment section so that we can put those questions before our panelists.